If you thought last week's episode was filled with crazy theories, hold on to your hats, because this week we go into psychic abilities, more time travel and brainwashing, and aliens. Follow me down the rabbit hole as we cover the Montauk Project. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the rabbit hole. I'm your host, Dani, and today we are covering the Montauk Project. This directly relates to the Philadelphia experiment. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, go back, listen to that episode. If you think that one's weird, you just buckle up, because things are about to get really strange around here. So I just want to prep you in advance because things are really weird. Also, public service announcement. I still have stickers and t-shirts I want to give away for free. I want to give them to you. Rate and review the show, and I'll send you a sticker. Share our show to social media. I'll send you a t-shirt. Do both. I'll send you both. As always, it really helps out the show, helps us get more listeners, and if I get more listeners, then I can start doing you guys a Patreon where I give you little bonus episodes and different things throughout the week. So please go ahead and share and rate and review, and let other people experience what you're experiencing every single week. Okay, on to the Montauk Project. So what is it? What's happening here? So the Montauk Project was a series of top secret experiments that kind of dealt with mind control, psychological warfare, teleportation, time travel, and contact with extraterrestrials. So if you have any questions, that's where we're going. And it's not the kind of mind control, psychological warfare you're expecting. It gets weird. It gets real weird. And the work of the Montauk Project is said to have followed, because of the success of the Philadelphia experiment. They're like, cool, you guys were really successful. That's really neat. I wonder what else we could do. So let's kind of step it back to the Philadelphia experiment here for a second, and let's connect these things. So most of the people that were a part of the Philadelphia experiment, that were on the USS Eldridge, they were brainwashed to forget what happened, but not everybody was. Just like the regular everyday sailors, people that weren't important, but all the important people, like the top scientists and researchers, they were like, no, you guys are way too important, and we cannot brainwash you. We need you. So they took those people. After seeing what they could do with the Philadelphia experiment, they wanted to know, what else what other work they could do, what other cool things they could come up with. They literally made an entire ship disappear and reappear, and sailors were found in, fused to bulkheads. They rematerialized inside out. Things got really weird over there, right? So then they brought him here, and they were like, all right, cool, let's do this new research, this new experiment, or more experiments, more things, right? So high-ranking members of the military, as well as researchers, thought they could come up with more applications to be used in the military to utilize, the time and space manipulation. So they wanted to keep doing that. So the researchers created this proposal for Congress. Congress was like, heck no. We don't know what this could potentially, the backlash is really huge. Also, we're not trying to give you a bunch of money for whatever it is you guys are trying to do. We're not trying to be a part of it. Also, we don't want to give you any of our people either. So they were really worried. Congress was really worried about, the resources, so money and people. But the researchers were not going to be told no that easily. They shifted their focus to the U.S. Department of Defense directly. They were like, hey, Department of Defense, you guys deal with our military, give us money, and we are going to be able to create these magnetic fields that are so powerful that it can drive enemies completely insane. And they had seen with the Philadelphia experiment that, some weird mental health things happen when you put these magnetic fields together. And the researchers claimed that they could cause like hallucinations, manic episodes, and even schizophrenia for enemies. So they were like, hey, we don't even have to like use American troops. We don't even have to use our people at all. We can literally just do this to the enemies and that's it. And the DoD was like, heck yes, if we're not putting our people at risk, let's do it. So the researchers got to work, right? I mean, that's literally what they're doing. So the work initially began at Brookhaven National Laboratory on Long Island. And at first, the project was called the Phoenix Project. And really what they found was that they kind of ran out of space. Not that they necessarily ran out of space, but they needed bigger, like they needed this large radar dish. They needed bigger things that were going to draw a lot more attention. And Brookhaven was kind of like in the middle of a lot of people and they needed more seclusion. So what did they do? They started looking for alternative sites, which makes sense. I mean, if you're gonna, they were trying not to draw too much attention because they were worried about like security breaches and, you know, that just people would be really asking a lot of questions about what was going on if they built this huge radar dish. They were a little nervous about just being in the middle of everybody. So in 1981, there was a decommissioned Air Force base located in Montauk, New York. Imagine that. It's called the Montauk Project. The reason it's called the Montauk Project is because it all took place in Montauk, New York. And it's at like the furthest, like most like northeastern tip of Long Island. And this Air Force base is kind of really cool because for them, it makes a lot of sense for them because it already had on the grounds a functional semi-automatic ground environment radar installation. What does that mean? It has radar dishes that they can use. And the base was obviously secluded enough and closed to the public, so it worked really good for top secret military or top secret experiments. They weren't military technically, because this was all kind of like under the table. And it was near the water, so people and equipment could kind of like come in and out through the water instead of through like public channels. But the base itself has a really cool history. So this base goes all the way back to the Revolutionary War with Britain. It was a really strategic place, so I guess we were really nervous that the British would invade us from this piece of land because it's at that tip of Long Island. It was kind of a perfect place for enemy troops to like kind of dock and come onto our land. So in the Revolutionary War, as well as in World War II, we were really worried about the enemy troops coming to invade us. And in World War I, this Air Force base was actually a Navy air station. So we flew a bunch of planes out of there. But back to World War II, that's when the name changed to Camp Hero, and that's when it became what it was known for. And then in the 1960s, in response to the Cold War and the USSR bombers, they built a massive radar dish right over a blast-resistant bunker, because if you remember, back, in the Cold War, we were really worried about, like, a nuclear war, and so they had all these bunkers that were built on this Air Force base to stop any attacks from the sky. And then later, in the 1960s, the equipment was moved, all the equipment for the Montauk Project was moved from Brookhaven to Camp Hero's underground bunkers to continue and expand their research. And it makes a lot of sense. They wanted to keep everything as quiet as possible. They had this giant radar dish. It was functional, but people didn't, it was already built there. And it was built there when it was a military base. And so when the military kind of moved off, then all the researchers were like, yep, let's move there. This is perfect. And they moved into underground bunkers. Apparently, these bunkers are huge. If you're driving a golf cart, it would take you 15 minutes to get from one side to the other side. There was a lot of stuff going on and a lot of room for them to expand and do a lot more research.
Did you know that over 40% of Americans have a hard time swallowing pills? So when it's time to take your vitamins, large capsules and pills are out of the question. We know that gummy vitamins exist, but they're full of sugar, they get stuck in your teeth, and they only contain a fraction of the nutrients you need. Luckily, Easy Melts has discovered the ultimate vitamin sweet spot. Vitamins that melt in your mouth, taste like a treat, and are packed with nutrients ready for absorption, all without an ounce of sugar. For a limited time, Easy Melts is giving listeners a free 3-month supply of vitamin D3 with their first purchase. To claim your free D3 vitamins, visit try.easymelts.com/spring24. That's melts.com/spring24. Say goodbye to the old way of taking your vitamins and say hello to the easy way. Menopausal and perimenopausal women, listen up. It's time to take control of your health and comfort, and Winona is here to help. Winona is a telemedicine company for menopause care who believes that your symptoms are real, important, and deserve to be taken seriously. And for many women, this starts with hormone replacement therapy. Winona's HRT is made with plant-based, bioidentical hormones rather than synthetic ones, so it better aligns with your body to offer relief from hot flashes, weight gain, and other uncomfortable symptoms. 80% of women who use Winona find relief within just 90 days. So, what are you waiting for? Get started today. Visit buywinona.com today to start your free visit. With free shipping and the ability to pause or cancel at any time, your path to wellness has zero obligations. Use code SPRING24 at buywinona.com for 25% off your first treatment plan. That's BYWINONA.com for 25% off. Winona, menopause care made easy.
So the Montauk Project officially started in the 1970s. And they were trying to use the experiments and equipment for two different reasons. So they had two different ways they were trying to influence minds, right? So one of them was to influence minds by the use, they were trying to use the experiments and equipment to influence minds as a type of weapon, causing like hysteria and panic in targeted individuals, or just direct mind control. Also, what they were trying to do with their radar dish and with their equipment that they had there, they were trying to amplify the powers of psychics to allow them to manipulate time and space and to create physical matter. And actually, there's a story I heard that it said that if an individual is hooked up to this machine, and we're going to get into this Montauk chair here in just a little while, but when an individual is hooked up to this machine, they can actually manifest something anywhere at any time. So, for example, if I wanted a soda, but I don't want a soda right now, I want a soda tomorrow at 3 p.m., I could, if I was a psychic, I could be hooked up to this machine, manifest this soda to show up on my kitchen counter tomorrow at 3 p.m., and it just shows up there. Like, they were trying to harness these powers of these psychics, and that was a lot of the work that they were doing there, is trying to harness the power of the psychics. Yes, they were trying to like influence these minds, and they were trying to cause hysteria. They saw that what they could do with the magnetic fields with the Philadelphia experiment, so they were like, let's use those magnetic fields to create hysteria and panic to try to control people's minds. We already know that we can definitely cause mental health issues, mental health disorders like schizophrenia, like all these crazy things. We literally made a person disappear. So we made a whole boat disappear. Let's see what else we can do. So they were really trying to harness the power of these psychics. Most of these experiments, by the way, the people that were involved in these experiments were not volunteers, let me tell you. There was hundreds, maybe thousands of people that they used for all their different experiments. Most of them were drifters, homeless people, runaways. But we're going to get into some really interesting folks called the Montauk Boys. I don't want to get too much into that yet because we're not there yet. So, where did all of this information come from? Well, we have a couple sources here. So you guys remember Al Bielek from the Philadelphia experiment? Yeah, so he's a huge player. Ed Cameron, Al Bielek, he's the same person, right? He's a huge player in the Montauk Project, as well as Preston Nichols and Duncan Cameron. Remember how I said that he either died or became a researcher? We didn't really know what happened to Duncan Cameron? Well, now we do. Okay, I'm gonna tell you guys what I know about these people, but before I do, I don't want you to think that I'm crazy. I'm literally just giving you the facts of this, and it's going to sound pretty out there. So, hang tight with me, guys, because things are about to get super strange. But, I mean, the Philadelphia experiment got weird. It's gonna get weirder than that. So, Preston Nichols was actually born on Long Island, New York, and he's like from the area. And he was born in 1946, so just after the Philadelphia experiment, right? Just a couple years. He ended up getting degrees in parapsychology, psychology, and electrical engineering. And after he graduated, he actually went to work into like defense electronics and worked at Brookhaven. And in 1968, he started his involvement with the Montauk Project. And in Montauk, he got involved kind of at the tail end of like the stealth research and was told like everything that happened with the Philadelphia experiment and read the final report of Project Rainbow, which was the Philadelphia experiment. And then the report named the Cameron brothers in this like experiment. And so he was like, okay, cool, like this is strange. But then he got pulled in to the mind sciences at on the project at Montauk. So he read all this stuff about the Philadelphia experiment, read about the Cameron brothers, and was like, cool, I guess this is fine. And then they were like, hey, by the way, since you have these degrees in parapsychology and psychology, because remember he was working in electronics, they're like, why don't you work with our mind department now? And he was like really trying to figure out how to make a person's mind kind of like work together with a computer. So he worked pretty close with Al Bielek on like the psychic aspects of the Montauk chair and the Montauk Boys program. Again, we're going to get into that, so don't you worry. But Preston Nichols was really instrumental in coming out. Him and Al Bielek were like really instrumental in coming out about this Montauk project, and he was actually one of like the biggest people to come forward and be like, hey, I worked on it, I was there. And actually there's some really weird stories about Preston Nichols. Let me just tell you like a quick little overview of this story. I'm not going to get into too many details, but apparently he was working in his garage on some mind control type things, and he kept having people like come to him, like all these psychics. He was trying to work with these psychics to help their abilities, and he actually went to the Air Force Base, and this was after like the Montauk Project had gotten shut down and everything was kind of done. And he went to this Air Force Base and was like, I don't know, like I have all these really like vivid memories of being here. And it is said that he was actually mind controlled, or the story goes that he was brainwashed after the Montauk Project was done. He was brainwashed, sent back in time because the Montauk Project ended in like 86, I want to say 83 or 86. The Montauk Project ended. And sorry, I can't find that in my notes. I'll get to that. But he was sent back in time and was for like 15 years and was creating this life of helping psychics try to develop their abilities after he'd already created a life of being in this Montauk Project. So that's how one of the story goes. It's pretty crazy, the things that are out here on the Montauk Project. Because of everything that's so weird that goes along with this, the stories are pretty out there as well. So anyway, now let's go to Al Bielek. Remember, Al Bielek was Ed Cameron in the Philadelphia experiment. So I'm going to go over his entire life. This is going to be quite the little intro for Ed here. Al described his early life as Ed Cameron. He was born in 1916, remember, and he was actually born in Long Island. His dad was Alexander, but his aunt, Arnold, actually raised him and Duncan in a mansion in Long Island. So Ed, when he was Ed, whatever, Ed went to Princeton in 1932 and finished up his education. He got a PhD at Harvard. he actually met Dr. John von Neumann. And this is really important. He first met Dr. John von Neumann at Princeton. And John von Neumann plays a very important role in Ed/Al's life. So after Ed left Harvard, both Ed and his brother Duncan were recruited to work with the Navy in 1939, and they were sent to like a 90-day training school, which there's a lot of, it's called like A schools to when I was in the Navy. And Dr. von Neumann actually recruited both of them to work on a project of invisibility, Project Rainbow. So they both had to like kind of relearn their physics. Dr. John von Neumann taught the two brothers about gravity and time and quantum physics, whatever, how it really works. And Ed needed to learn the theory behind invisibility so he could accurately report to the Navy the progress of the experiment, which totally makes sense. So while working on the project, he met Tesla and Einstein because they were obviously both very involved because the unified field theory. They were testing this theory. They were really working with the Project Rainbow side of it. The whole point of this was to make our ships, and actually the Project Rainbow is mostly about our planes, like invisible to enemy radar. It's a good idea. And that's how like they were part of these invisibility or these experiments before. So they had been part of these experiments, and they had been working on things like this. So when the USS Eldridge started like acting really funny, they both jumped off. It's because they knew the feelings that they were having when that boat started acting really funny wasn't normal. So anyway, we're going to jump over to Al's life, right? So Al was born in 1927, apparently, right? Because that's when his consciousness was put back. And his first memories was like he was 9 months old at a family Christmas party, and he could like understand everything that was happening. He understood all the conversations, he understood everything, but he was a baby, so he couldn't actually talk. And then he went through grade school, and he was known as like a walking encyclopedia. And he graduated high school. He took an electronics test, the only one to pass. And the Navy needed people like him during the war and recruited him. Of course, now he's worked in the Navy twice. Al later completed his education and took like various jobs, all like in the electronic field. And he kept contracting with the military. The people who worked with him began to reveal the truth about the involvement with like extraterrestrials and psychic operations and different things like that. So he was recruited to the Montauk Project, and it's hard to believe all of these things because he said that he would work a normal job in California and then take an underground subway to Montauk, Long Island to carry out his duties there, which is those are opposite sides of the country. But after the time tunnel was perfected, he would simply be teleported to the underground base and then returned back to his apartment. No problem. He got teleportation now. He says during the 70s, he was the program director for the psychics who manned the Montauk chair. And again, we're going to get into the Montauk chair. And since the Montauk Boys were a key program at Montauk, Al had some influence with that program as well. He mostly handled the operations of the mind control program and was in regular contact with Duncan Cameron. And at this point, like, he doesn't know that he's Ed Cameron yet. We haven't got there yet. So he's in a lot of contact with Duncan Cameron and Preston Nichols. And then Stuart Swerdlow, who is one of the Montauk Boys, he was under Al Bielek. And we're going to get into Stuart Swerdlow because he has some crazy things to say as well. I feel like everything in this story is so crazy. In the 1980s, when the time control programs were operational, Al participated in some of the time travel experiments. Both he and Duncan traveled to Mars on several occasions. Like, okay, we're going to go to Mars. And he now remembers that several other trips he took with teams to a research station in 100,000 BC and other planets to get canisters filled with light and dark energy. And he also went to the year 6037. So, I don't know. He was just traveling all over time and space. And in January of 1988, of course, he went and he saw a movie with his family, The Philadelphia Experiment, and that's when his memories started to return, and he started to believe that he was Ed Cameron and started to try to figure out, his whole life and like what was actually happening. So, and ironically, just as his memories were returning, Dr. John von Neumann, who was supposed to be dead by this point, tried to get in touch with him because he had made a promise to Ed Cameron that if his memories ever returned, then he would get in contact with him. Of course, Al went forward to talk about everything that happened in his life and all the different aspects of it, and we've heard some weird things come out of Al Bielek's mouth. Some definitely some weird things. I believe some weird things, but this story is pretty out there for me. But here are the facts. I'm just giving you what I know. So, now let's talk about Duncan Cameron. And then we're going to get into like how, Preston Nichols and Al Bielek kind of work together on the Montauk chair and the Montauk boys, because that's really cool. But Duncan Cameron first. So, obviously, he was part of the Philadelphia Experiment and the Montauk Project. According to Al, Duncan was his brother when Al was Ed. And they both jumped off the Eldridge in 43 and landed in the future, and then eventually wound up in 83 at Montauk, and they were both sent. So here's where the story is different from what I told you last week. So they were both sent to the USS Eldridge to destroy the equipment that was keeping the ship in hyperspace. So apparently the ship was being held in hyperspace. They were both sent back. Whereas last week when I told you, like, Al could be reset, but Duncan couldn't. So Al says that once the USS Eldridge had rematerialized, Duncan had jumped back off the ship and went back to 1983. He was like, nah, fuck this shit, I'm out. And he went back to 1983, and that's where he, like, was part of the Montauk Project then. So he was a huge part of this project because he was one of the biggest psychics, and he had the best abilities of all of the psychics in the experiments. So, but during one of the experiments, I guess Duncan had lost his time lock and began to age 1 year for every hour that had passed. So, whatever was holding him in that time instead of being in his normal timeline. So then the time engineers at Montauk went back in time to 1950 and convinced Duncan's father, Alexander Cameron, to sire another son. And when he did, they removed Duncan's soul and put it into that new son. How did they know it was going to be son? I don't know. But this is what happened. Then this person, who is now known as Duncan Cameron, but like way younger. So the new Duncan picked up where the old Duncan left off, because of course he has all his memories and everything, because they didn't brainwash him, they just put the new soul in the baby. He became one of the principal psychics, and he manned the Montauk chair most of the time. Duncan and Stuart Swerdlow, which we still haven't got to yet, were both Montauk boys, and they're both Montauk boy programmers. They're part of the program, and they both like remember it, which is odd because it said that they brainwashed everybody after the Montauk Project was done, but apparently not Duncan and Stuart. Anyway, so let's get into the Montauk chair. So think of X-Men. Think of Cerebro in X-Men, where Professor X, he goes into that like room that's a ball and he can communicate with the mutants or the humans. So that's kind of what this radar dish was doing, and this chair was hooked up, and these psychics would sit in this chair, and this is the only way that they could like utilize their powers the way that it's said that they can utilize it. So they were utilizing quantum fields to read a person's thoughts, and they're actually trying to put one person's thoughts into another mind, kind of like mind control that way. But the chair helped like amplify and direct the powers, and it's kind of a crucial part in opening up like a porthole in the space-time continuum, and this would also allow like the researchers to travel to any time, and it's even said to allow them to communicate with aliens, and they called it a time tunnel. This chair also collected and amplified the fear energy harnessed from the Montauk boys. So they put these Montauk boys, and it was a lot of boys. They would put them through terrible, awful, excruciating things, and they would harness their fear from the trauma that they put them through. I don't know what for. I guess maybe they were trying to put this fear energy into their enemies. Like, I don't know what they were using this for. But that's also what this chair was used for. So the Montauk boys were these boys that were recruited. I wouldn't call it recruited, but that's what they called it. To test out psychic abilities, right? And they say that these boys were recruited because of their like genetic disposition for abilities. But Nichols worked on training the boys to be like psi warriors, and they were supposed to be like have these like cool mind control abilities, and they were going to be used as deadly weapons. They were pretty much trying to create like a mind control army. But the boys were put through hell, obviously, and they were put through hell to break down and destroy what their minds were. And once their minds were broken, then they rebuilt them in the way that they wanted them to be built. So that way the boys would follow orders, and the boys were actually mind controlled, and they were mind controlled to control other people's minds, if that makes sense. But only about 1% of the boys actually survived, and among those survivors was Stuart Swerdlow. So his story is also a little strange, because if that's not the topic of the day, I don't know what is. So Swerdlow recalls that he was visited many times growing up, and actually even his birth was weird because the doctors told his mother that he would never, like she would never be able to have babies, and then she got pregnant with Stuart. And Stuart says that he was visited multiple times while he was growing up by extraterrestrials, and then one day these extraterrestrials just abducted him. It turns out that they weren't extraterrestrials at all. It was just the military trying to fool him, trying to make him think that he was abducted by aliens, and that way he wouldn't be any the wiser. Well, he figured it out, obviously. And they had chosen him again because of the genetic disposition for abilities that they thought that he had. And at Montauk, they helped him to enhance his abilities because apparently he did have abilities. But later, 1983, this is 1983, the base was destroyed. So it must have been after the Cameron brothers had gone back. I mean, you have a whole year there. So after the base was destroyed, it was rebuilt later, because if you go to Montauk now, there is an Air Force base there, and it's a tourist attraction. I haven't been there, really want to go. But the base was destroyed, and Swerdlow was kind of sent into this tailspin because he believed that he had this like lock with the base where they were kind of still in control of him, and that when the lock was released, he kind of lost his identity. I mean, remember, his brain was literally broken down to nothing and then rebuilt. So they had this control over him, and it said that actually the like radars and different things that were on the base helped to control the boys and the psychics in the area. If you were within a certain distance of this radar dish, then you were still, like, it was controlling you if you were a psychic. Of course, when he lost his identity, he needed to rebuild and try to figure out who he was. But he never actually lost his memories of Montauk or the experiments. And he was actually at one point put into federal prison they were trying to persuade him to like, hey, don't talk about anything. Yes, you can still remember, but just like keep your mouth shut. Swerdlow does confirm that he knew of Al Bielek at Montauk during the same time that he was there. So he knew that Al Bielek was there. He doesn't say that they worked hand in hand, but he says that Al Bielek was there. So that's kind of what was going on at Montauk. They were really trying to focus on like these psychic abilities and space-time continuum and different things. They said that they got into touch with aliens, and they actually learned about hyperspace. They got a lot of their technology from these aliens. A lot of different things happened when they got in contact with aliens. They got a lot of things from these extraterrestrials that they were in touch with. But not all of them were good extraterrestrials. I mean, just like not all people are good people. So some other weird facts and experiments that happened at Camp Hero, since we're on the topic. There is a theory out there that the moon landing hoax was actually filmed at Camp Hero. So they can put people on Mars, with time travel and different things. They can do all these things with all these cool abilities. They've got time travel, teleportation, psychic abilities, and then they go ahead and film the fake moon landing. They didn't actually really go to the moon. That's one of the theories. I'm just putting it out there. Also, it's said that they were creating like hybrid or like mutant creatures. One of the rumors says that the beast, the Jersey Devil, which was actually created there at Camp Hero, and then it escaped, made its way down to New Jersey, was like, I like it here, and stayed. So the New Jersey Devil, or the Jersey Devil, was created in Camp Hero and escaped, and they didn't even try to look for it. They were like, yeah, that's good. Cool. That's just one of the rumors. So what actually happened to the Montauk Project? A couple of the theories here. There's 3 theories, or 4-ish, 3.5. So one of the theories that they just ran out of funding. Remember, it's kind of like all an underground secret project that nobody really knows about. So they just ran out of funding and they're like, all right, cool, we're just going to shut it down. Another theory is that the experiments had kind of like reached the limit of like the technology that they had at the time, and they stored all the stuff, all the information for later. Could that mean that they are either currently working on the same type things or not? I don't know. This is just one of the theories. And then the last theory is kind of a 2-part theory. So remember, it's like 3.5 theories of why it shut down. This is the 0.5 part. So it's said that a monster actually destroyed the base of operations, which is why the Montauk Project kind of stopped. There's 2 different theories here. So one of them is that Duncan Cameron actually manifested with his psychic abilities what they called Junior. It's kind of like a Bigfoot type monster that wrecked the whole base. Or the other theory, which is along the same lines, is that an alien monster came through their time tunnel and wrecked the base. So it's said that the monster, in whichever form you want to believe, whether it was Duncan Cameron's or the alien, destroyed irreplaceable equipment, which the irreplaceable equipment was equipment given to us by aliens, and that's actually why our experiments were so successful with the Montauk Project. And we didn't actually understand the equipment. We couldn't recreate it. We couldn't get more because whichever story you're believing here, the time tunnel or the equipment of the Montauk chair, it had to be destroyed in order to trap the monster in like the bunker, and they trapped the monster and killed it. So they had this irreplaceable equipment. All this equipment was destroyed, and the researchers couldn't keep researching because the equipment that they needed that was irreplaceable was destroyed, and they had to shut down this either the time tunnel or all the equipment that the Montauk chair was hooked up to kill this monster. Either way, there was like a monster, and it killed lots of people. And also, they said that the monster literally destroyed equipment and killed some researchers, gobbled up a couple researchers in the meantime. So everyone else was either brainwashed, or if the brainwashing didn't work, they just killed them, or they threatened them to absolute secrecy. Obviously, that didn't work because a couple people came forward. But it said that if the brainwashing didn't take, then they would just kill them or threaten them. But also, as we see with Al, yes, the brainwashing might work at first, but it can wear off. If any of this story sounds familiar to you, well, if you've watched the Netflix series Stranger Things, it's roughly based off of this. Stranger Things was actually supposed to be called Montauk before it was called Stranger Things. They decided to not base it in New York, base it in Indiana instead. And, there's still the the monster and the upside down and all that. But that's the Montauk Project in a nutshell. There's some weird things happening here. I don't know what else to say about that. So I hope that you really enjoyed the story. Whether it's true or not, I mean, it really is what movies are made of. Because you've got teleportation, you've got time travel, you've got monsters, psychic abilities, everything you could ever want in a good story. Here it is. So make a sci-fi movie out of it. They already have, actually. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. I really want to cover MK Ultra because that's another like mind control type conspiracy theory, and it's actually a really good one. So I'm thinking that's what I'm going to do next week. So come back for that. I hope until then you all stay skeptical, and I will see you all next week. If you like the show, please leave us a rating and review wherever you are listening. Follow us on Instagram at rabbit.holepodcast. The Rabbit Hole is an independent podcast with all research, writing, editing, and producing done by me, Dani Mercy. Special thank you to Zakar Valaha Music.